Dear students, welcome again to the EduSat learning program. Today we are going to discuss about free charges, bound charges in conductors, insulators, Gauss law in insulators and also about capacitors. Before going to discuss about Gauss law in insulators, let us have a recap over the previous class. In the previous class, we have discussed Gauss law of free charges. In CGS system, the Gauss law was having the form integration E dot ds was 4 pi q, where q is the free charge enclosed within the surface. In SI system, it was integration over the surface was q divided by epsilon 0. These charges are the charges enclosed within the surface, and using this Gauss law, we have calculated the electric field inside a conductor was 0. Now, let us use the concept of electric field inside a conductor as 0 to find the charges developed on different faces of a conductor. Suppose we have two conductors, one of the conductor is suppose given a charge q1 and the other is given a charge q2. Now, let us try to calculate what are the charges developed on each face of these conductors. These two conductors have 4 faces. Let this face of the conductor has a charge of q dash, and again this will have a charge of minus q dash. So, if I consider a point somewhere here, to calculate the electric field at this point due to all the charges present, the electric field will be 0 according to Gauss law, and the 4 charges producing electric field at this point now can be specified as this has q1 minus q dash on this face, on the face 1, on face 2 it is q dash, on face 3 it is minus q dash, and on face 4 it is q2 plus q dash, because the total charge on plate number 2 is q2 and the total charge on first plate is q1. Now, at this point, as we know, the electric field is q divided by 2a epsilon naught due to a plane sheet of charge we have already calculated. So, using this formula, we get E1 due to the first surface is q1 minus q dash divided by 2a epsilon naught. E2 it is minus q dash divided by 2a epsilon naught. The negative sign is due to the fact that both the charges are suppose positive. So, q dash will produce an electric field towards left and q1 minus q dash will produce an electric field towards right, both are away from the plates. And similarly, E3 the electric field due to the third plate, third face will be, it is again towards, so it is q dash divided by 2a epsilon naught, and the electric field due to the fourth face will be minus q2 plus q dash divided by 2a epsilon naught. Now, if I calculate all this, I have considered the directions of electric fields by taking positive and negative signs. Since the net electric field inside a conductor is 0 according to Gauss law, so obviously we get the net electric field E equal to 0. So, therefore, E1 plus E2 plus E3 plus E4 is equal to 0. So, this will give us Q1 minus Q dash plus Q dash minus Q2 plus Q dash is equal to 0. So, this implies Q1 minus Q2 equal to 2 Q dash, or Q dash is Q1 minus Q2 divided by 2. So, what is Q dash? Q dash is the charge appearing on the inner face of first plate and also on the inner face of the second plate. Now, if we write the charges on each faces, so my first face will have a charge of Q1 minus Q dash. So, it is Q1 plus Q2 by 2. Charge on the second face is Q dash, it is Q1 minus Q2 by 2. Charge on the third face is minus Q dash, it is minus of Q1 minus Q2 divided by 2, and charge on the fourth face it is Q2 plus Q dash, this is again Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2. So, these are the charges they will develop on each face of these two plates. In a specific case, if Q1 is equal to Q2, if Q1 is equal to Q2 equal to Q, if charges of same magnitude and same polarity is given to two plates like this, then obviously there will be no charge appearing on the inner faces of both the plates. All the charges will remain on the outer faces. If Q1 equal to Q and Q2 equal to minus Q, as is the case for a parallel plate capacitor, we will see later on, you will see that the charges appearing on the outer faces are 0 and on the inner faces it is Q and minus Q. So, if equal and opposite charges are given to two plates, then all the charges will come to the inner faces, the outer faces will have 0 charge. Let us take another example. If we have suppose 3 plates, this is my first plate, second plate and third plate. To the first plate I give a charge of plus Q and to the third plate I give a charge of minus 2Q. Then what are the charges appearing on the 6 faces of these 3 plates? Let the charge on the middle plate is, suppose on this side it is minus Q, on this side it is plus Q. So, this is minus Q and this is plus Q, and this will be Q minus Q on this side and this will be minus 2Q plus Q on this side. Again using the same concept, you can choose any point inside the 3 plates, any point. If I choose this point, so what I get? I get the electric field due to Q minus Q, first phase is away from the plate. For the fourth plate, for the third plate, it is in the same direction. So, it is Q minus Q, and this is plus Q minus Q minus Q plus Q, and this one is minus 2Q plus Q, all divided by 2A epsilon naught must be equal to 0. So, therefore, plus Q minus Q plus Q minus Q, what we get is 3Q equal to 2Q, or Q equal to 3Q over 2. So, when small q equal to 3 times capital Q by 2, what we get? We get the charge on the second phase is plus 3Q by 2 and minus 3Q by 2 plus 3Q by 2 minus 3Q by 2. So, obviously, this is minus Q by 2 and this is Q minus 3Q by 2, it is minus Q by 2. So, minus Q by 2 and minus Q by 2 are the charges, they will appear on the extreme faces of this combination of 3 plates, and we are getting the charges of plus 3Q by 2 and minus 3Q by 2 alternately on the faces of other faces inside the 3 plates. Okay. Now, this is about your parallel plates where the charges are being divided in this fashion applying Gauss law. Now, let us consider 3 concentric spheres having radius A, B and C, where Q is the charge given to the sphere of radius small a, we can say A is less than B is less than C, and minus Q is given to the sphere of radius C, where the sphere of radius B is earthed. So, let the charge developed on the inner face is my minus Q, on the outer face of radius B is suppose Q dash. So, this will be minus Q dash, and the outer surface will have a charge of minus Q plus Q dash. Okay. Now, since the sphere of radius B is earthed, then its potential is 0. In this case, the potential of V is equal to 0. Now, let us try to calculate the potential of B from these charges. Due to the charge on sphere of radius A, the potential on B will be Q divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 B minus Q divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 B plus Q dash by 4 pi epsilon 0 B minus Q dash by 4 pi epsilon 0 C plus minus Q plus Q dash divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 C, and this is equal to 0. Okay. So, what I get is Q dash divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 B is equal to Q divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 C. So, 4 pi epsilon 0 will be cancelled out. We will get, my intention is to find out the value of Q dash. So, Q dash equal to Q into B divided by C. This is very important. So, now the charges are plus Q on the surface of the sphere of radius A, minus Q on the inner surface of radius B, and QB by C plus QB by C on the outer surface of radius B, and minus QB by C on the inner surface of radius C, and minus Q plus Q dash QB by C on the, or Q into B by C minus 1 on the outer surface of the sphere of radius C. Okay. So, in this way we can calculate the charges on different surfaces in a combination of conductors by using Gauss law, the concept of Gauss law, and also the concept of potential. Now, let us discuss about the free and bound charges in case of conductors and insulators. Conductors, where the outermost electrons in atoms are loosely bound and are almost free to move throughout the body. These are known as free electrons, or we can say free charges moving around the body. These free electrons are also called conduction electrons. Other electrons which are bound to the nucleus are known as bound charges. Metals, some of the liquids like mercury, and ionized gases are examples of conductors. Similarly, in insulators, normally we do not have any free electrons. The electrons are tightly bound to their respective nuclei. There are no free electrons or free charges. All the charges are bound. On application of an electric field, the electrons may slightly shift opposite to the field, but they cannot leave their parent atoms. All non-metals are insulators. One thing we should know that if we apply a very high electric field, we may get some field emission, we may get some electrons as well as their corresponding holes, and this situation is known as the dielectric breakdown for an insulator. The insulator will no more behave like an insulator beyond this electric field. So, therefore, if it is an insulator, then there are no free electrons, all the electrons, all the charges are bound charges. Now, the dielectric materials are divided into two types, polar and non-polar. In some materials consisting of your atoms and molecules, monoatomic molecules normally have positive charge center and negative charge center coinciding with each other. In some molecules also, polyatomic molecules also, like carbon dioxide having a linear chain, where the positive charge center and the negative charge center, they are coinciding with each other. Therefore, monoatomic materials and some polyatomic materials like carbon dioxide, carbon tetrachloride, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, etc., are normally non-polar, but the polyatomic materials like HCl, water H2O, ammonia, etc., they are initially having poles, or we can say they are represented by dipoles, because their positive charge center is different from the negative charge center. If we think about a water molecule, we can say the angle between the hydrogen bond is 104 degree 5 minute, and therefore, the positive charge center is different from the negative charge center. So, it is a polar molecule. But whether it is a polar molecule or a non-polar molecule, if an electric field is applied, the polar molecules are ready to align themselves in the direction of electric field. But for a non-polar molecule, what happens is, when we apply an electric field, the electron cloud, this is my nucleus and this is my electron cloud. If an electric field is applied, now the electron cloud is shifted opposite to the electric field, producing a distorted shape of electron cloud with the nucleus shifting towards the electric field. So, therefore, the positive charge center and the negative charge center now are separated by a distance, small distance. So, any atom or molecule now can be represented by an electric dipole. So, this is because of the polarization. So, if I apply an electric field in a piece of dielectric, may be polar or non-polar, then suppose the electric field, applied electric field is in this direction. So, this is my E0. Now, this side we will have the negative charges, and on this side we will have the positive charges, whereas the electric field due to polarization will be opposite to the applied field. Now, the net field E inside the dielectric will be given by E0 minus EP, which is equal to E0 divided by K, where K is the dielectric constant of the material. Now, putting the value of E0 and EP, if I represent that my E0 is sigma by 2 epsilon 0, EP as sigma p divided by 2 epsilon 0, and E as E0 by K. So, it is sigma by 2 K epsilon 0, then I get sigma by K equal to sigma minus sigma p, or I can have sigma p equal to sigma into 1 minus 1 by K, or Qp equal to Q0 into 1 minus 1 over K. So, the charge developed due to polarization is equal to Q0 into 1 minus 1 by K. As we know, K equal to infinity for conductors. So, we will always get charge due to polarization is equal to Q0. But for any other dielectric, the value of K is ranging from 0 to infinity, between any value from 0 to infinity. So, we will get a different value of charge due to polarization. Okay. So, using this formula E equal to E 0 by k, we can also calculate the potential inside a dielectric. The intensity of polarization P is defined as the dipole moment per unit volume. Suppose due to polarization in a dielectric, the charge density developed is sigma p, and if A is the area of the material and L is its length, then obviously the polarization P is equal to dipole moment, it is sigma p into A into L divided by the volume of the specimen A into L. So, this will give you equal to P is equal to sigma p. So, the surface charge density is equal in magnitude to the polarization P. Now, let us try to develop or define Gauss law in a dielectric media. Suppose I have a plate, between these two plates I have a dielectric slab of dielectric constant K. Now, if Q is the charge on the first plate and minus Q on the second plate, it is connected to battery, and I consider my Gaussian surface like this. So, this is my QP minus, and this is plus QP. So, applying Gauss law in the selected region, I get integration E dot ds is equal to Q enclosed divided by epsilon 0. So, the Q enclosed is Q minus Q into 1 minus 1 by k, because previously we have calculated what is the value of QP. QP is Q into 1 minus 1 by k divided by epsilon 0. So, here we get it is Q divided by k epsilon 0. So, therefore, integration over the surface K E dot ds is equal to Q divided by epsilon 0. Now, I can write this Q as the free charge present inside the surface. So, inside the surface we have free charge Q and bound charge minus QP. The charges which are developed due to polarization are always bound charges. They are just due to a shift from the center of negative charge or center of positive charge. The charges are not being detached from the atoms. So, therefore, they are bound charges. So, Q is the free charge present here, QP is the bound charge present here. So, my Gauss law is now modified to integration K E dot ds is Q free divided by epsilon 0. Now, for a medium, for a dielectric, I can write integration K E dot ds equal to Q free divided by epsilon, or K epsilon E dot ds equal to q free. And what is this one? K epsilon E. This is nothing but my d dot ds equal to q free. This is another form of Gauss law, where d is the electric displacement vector. My electric displacement vector d equal to, we can say it is epsilon E plus p. In vacuum, epsilon goes to epsilon 0, p goes to 0. So, I have d equal to epsilon 0 E and k equal to 1. So, these are the parameters of vacuum. So, I have d equal to epsilon 0 E for vacuum. So, putting the value of d equal to epsilon 0 E here, we can generate this formula. So, this is my Gauss law in a dielectric medium. So, integration k E dot ds equal to q free by epsilon 0 or integration d dot ds is equal to q free. So, this gives us a clear cut concept of free charges and bound charges in conductors and insulators. If we are talking about charge enclosed, then we have to consider all the charges present inside the surface. But when we are talking about free charges, then there will be an additional term of k in the left side of the Gauss law. Now, using this concept of Gauss law in a dielectric, let us first find the electric field due to a point charge in an infinite dielectric. To find the electric field due to a point charge in an infinite dielectric, suppose here is a charge q and I have an infinite dielectric. Okay. So, there is a cavity in which a charge q is placed. So, obviously, this is minus q p, the charge due to polarization. I am considering a point P here. To find the electric field at P, to use Gauss law, it can be of two types. We can use the Gauss law of the first kind, we can use the Gauss law of the second kind. Using the Gauss law of first kind, we can write integration E dot ds equal to q enclosed divided by epsilon 0. So, E dot ds integration is how much? It is E integration ds is, suppose this distance is r. So, into 4 pi r square, it is q minus q into 1 minus 1 by k divided by epsilon 0. So, I will get electric field E equal to q divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 k r square. Now, using the second form of Gauss law, now let us try to see whether the same thing is coming or not. If I use integration k E dot ds equal to q free divided by epsilon 0. So, this will give me k E into 4 pi r square equal to q free is q divided by epsilon 0, because within the sphere, Gaussian sphere, q is the free charge and minus qp is the bound charge. So, my E equal to q divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 k r square. You see, whether you apply Gauss law using the free charge or Gauss law using the total charge enclosed, we are arriving at the same result. Now, let us see for a conductor of irregular surface how the charge density into the curvature is a constant, radius of curvature is a constant. Suppose we have an irregular surface, and normally what we see that the charges are having a higher population over the edges or over the surfaces where the radius of curvature is minimum. How this is happening? If we consider, suppose two spheres, one is having a charge q a and the other is having a charge q b, radius is r a and radius is r b and are connected. What will happen? The charges will flow from one to the other till their potentials are becoming same. So, potential of A is q a divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 r a must be equal to q b divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 r b. Now, multiplying r a in the numerator of left hand side and r b in the numerator of the right hand side, what we get? It is sigma a r a divided by epsilon 0. This is sigma b r b divided by epsilon 0. Since epsilon 0 is a constant, what we get? We get sigma r is a constant. So, for any surface or any conductors having same potential, if the conductors are at same potential or if a single surface at a constant potential, then the irregularity of the surface is taken care of by the charge density. Here, if we consider the surface of a conductor which is completely irregular, then we will see that the more density of charges will occur at the portions having less radius of curvature and less density will be present at the portions where the radius of curvature is higher. So, if this is my R A and this is my R B, since R A is greater than R B, so this will give you sigma A will be less than sigma B. So, the charge density at A will be smaller than the charge density at B. Let us go to the next slide. In the next slide, we are going to discuss about capacity of conductors and capacitors. In the universe, we have capacity of all substances. A bucket has a capacity maybe of 15 liter. We have a capacity of eating some suppose 100 grams of rice. So, everything has a capacity. Similarly, in electricity, all the conductors have capacity of storing charges. If suppose there is a conductor and we give a charge q to this conductor, as a result the potential of the conductor is raised to V, then the capacity of this conductor is defined as the charge developed per unit potential difference or unit potential. If I give a potential of 1 volt, the amount of charge developed on the conductor is known as its capacity. The unit of capacity is farad. 1 farad is 1 coulomb divided by 1 volt, or this is 1 coulomb per volt. Therefore, knowing the capacity of a conductor, we can also calculate the charge to be developed on that conductor if it is supplied with a potential V, and this is equal to CV. So, Q equal to CV. The capacity of a conductor depends on some parameters of the conductors. We will see it later on. In different cases, the parameters will be different. We have three types of capacitors: parallel plate capacitor, cylindrical plate capacitor and spherical plate capacitor. We will see them one by one. So, before going into discussing about the capacitors in detail, suppose I have a combination of plates, two plates are there. Suppose its capacity is 1 microfarad. Suppose this combination gives a capacity of 1 microfarad, and I give a charge of 10 microcoulomb on one plate and a charge of minus 5 microcoulomb on the other plate. Therefore, what is the charge on the capacitor Q? Is Q1 minus Q2 by 2. If you remember my first problem of this class, the charge on the capacitor will be Q1 minus Q2 divided by 2. So, this will give you 15 microcoulomb divided by 2, it is 7.5 microcoulomb. Knowing the charge and capacity, now I can calculate the potential difference between the plates. V equal to Q by C. Q is 7.5 microcoulomb and C is 1 microfarad. So, this is equal to 7.5 volt. So, in this way, using the concept of charge development, knowing the capacity of a group of conductors, we can calculate the potential difference between them. Now, let us go to discuss about the parallel plate capacitor in detail. We get a parallel plate capacitor by taking at least two parallel plates. We can also take more than two parallel plates, that will give you a gang capacitor, that is normally used in radios, TV, television, radios, etc. So, now let us consider a simple case of two conductors or two plates. Now, I connect it to a battery of potential V. This is a capacitor, parallel plate capacitor consisting of two parallel plates, each plate having area A and the plate separation is D. Now, the electric field between the plates, this is my positive plate and this is my negative plate. The electric field between the plates, as I know, that is sigma by 2 epsilon 0 plus sigma by 2 epsilon 0 equal to sigma by epsilon 0, because for positive plate the electric field is away from the plate, for negative plate the electric field is towards the plate. If I consider a point outside the plate, as I have already told you, the electric field will be 0 and on this side also the electric field will be 0. So, the electric field between the two plates is sigma by epsilon 0. So, therefore, the potential difference V equal to integration E dx from 0 to d, and this will give you, since E is a constant, this will give you simply the potential difference V equal to E d. So, this is equal to sigma d divided by epsilon 0. Therefore, the capacity of this capacitor having plate area A and plate separation D is Q divided by V. Q is sigma A divided by V is sigma D divided by epsilon 0. So, it is epsilon 0 A divided by D. So, the capacity C equal to epsilon 0 A divided by D. What we see? C is directly proportional to A and C is inversely proportional to the plate separation. Means more is the plate area, more will be the capacity. Smaller is the distance between the plates, more will be the capacity. If the space between the plates is now filled with a dielectric, if the space between the plates is filled with a dielectric of constant K, then what will happen? The electric field inside will be equal to E0 divided by K, and therefore, V will be equal to E0 D divided by K. So, therefore, your C dash will be equal to sigma A divided by E0 sigma D by epsilon 0 K. So, this is equal to sigma sigma will go, it is epsilon 0 K A divided by D. So, my C dash, the new capacity, if a dielectric slab of K dielectric constant is introduced between the plates, then my new capacity will be epsilon 0 K A by D. So, what we see that the capacitance is increased with the introduction of dielectric slab between the plates. If the space between the plates is not completely filled with a dielectric, if the space between the plates is not completely filled, suppose we have a dielectric of constant K and thickness T, whereas D is the thickness or the distance between the two plates. So, in this case, the capacity C will be equal to epsilon 0 A divided by D minus T plus T by K. Okay. Let us consider a situation where a capacitor is charged with a potential V, C is the capacity and Q is the charge on the capacitor, where my Q equal to CV and C equal to epsilon 0 A by D. Okay. Now, since these charges are positive and negative, they must be having a force of attraction between them. The force of attraction F between the two plates will be F equal to charge Q into the electric field at that point. The electric field is sigma divided by 2 epsilon 0. So, this is equal to, it will be negative because the force is attractive. So, minus Q into Q divided by 2A epsilon 0. So, it is minus Q square by 2A epsilon 0. The negative sign indicates that the force is attractive. So, the magnitude of force is Q square by 2A epsilon 0. So, this is the force acting on the plates due to each other, Q square by 2A epsilon 0. Now, let us consider a small numerical. Suppose between two walls I have a spring and a capacitor connected like this. If the spring has a spring constant K and the capacitor is given a charge Q, then what is the expansion of the spring? Now, the force on the capacitor plates F is Q square divided by 2A epsilon 0, which must be equal to Kx. So, this will give us x equal to Q square divided by 2A epsilon 0 K, where K is the spring constant. Okay. So, in this way we can calculate the expansion or compression of the spring. Compression will occur if these two charges will be positive. So, knowing the value of force, we can calculate energy of a capacitor. The energy of a capacitor U equal to F dx integration. So, it is Q square by 2A epsilon 0 integration dx from 0 to d. So, it is Q square d divided by 2A epsilon 0, or this is Q square by 2C. So, energy of a capacitor when charged to Q and capacity C is Q square by 2C. In other form, it is half QV or half CV square. So, in this way, for a parallel plate capacitor, we can calculate the capacity with and without dielectric, the force between the plates of the capacitor and the energy of the capacitor. Thank you.